Hello, my name is Mark Jan, and I'm the Vice President leading Sales Engineering at Commvault in EMEA. I'm responsible for providing our customers with the outcomes they need when making investments in our technology and services. And here at Commvault, we've lived and breathed all things data management for over 20 years, continuously innovating with over 900 active and enforced patents to our name, setting the direction for others to consistently follow. The key industry analysts, Forrester, IDC and Gartner, believe that we are the leader in modern data management. And the reason for that is that those analysts are being told every day that we're delivering world-class data management outcomes for some of the world's largest, most successful and demanding organizations, including AstraZeneca, Allianz and Microsoft, to name but a few. Those same customers are telling us that they've realized a 44% reduction in annual infrastructure spending, a 62% reduction in annual unplanned downtime, and a colossal 50% reduction in their annual exposure to compliance failures. But I really want to tell you why all that matters to you. Today, every modern business is completely dependent upon IT systems to digitally transform their organizations and better serve their customers. At the core of these systems is data. It drives everything. It's the oil, if you will, that keeps the IT machines that keep businesses running. Planning, selling, buying, reporting, producing, I can go on. Without data, business stops. It's that simple. We're also in unprecedented times. And since the COVID-19 situation we all face together and today, that's really driving home the message to CIOs that digital business has to be a major priority and that the pace of that digital transformation has to accelerate. We saw some short-term acceleration when COVID hit as organizations had to rapidly adapt to embrace remote working. And I think as Satya Nadella, the head of Microsoft, said at the time, seeing 2 years of digital transformation happen in as little as 2 months. To sustain that, and even increase that acceleration, we believe companies need to have a singular focus on data. Why? Well, not just because it's a key asset, it's because it's the only way to make the transformation journey safely, securely, and compliantly, whilst at the same time keeping control of costs. It simply can't be transformed no matter what the cost. That's just not a sustainable approach. And as we know today more than ever, organizations are under constant pressure to reduce costs, but at the same time, continue to innovate. And if this wasn't enough, today's data is created and stored everywhere, in data centers, in public cloud, private cloud platforms, billions of laptops and smartphones. And let's not forget, compliance regulations such as GDPR doesn't care where the data is. So that total data visibility across all platforms is absolutely critical. And one more thing, the average growth in data is 20% per year. So in 42 months, you have twice as much data as you have today, but certainly not twice as much budget, perhaps less in real terms. So it's not surprising then that being a CIO today is arguably one of the most demanding C-level roles in any company, and one with even higher levels of attrition and burnout than CEO and CFOs. But it doesn't have to be like this. The CIOs in our customers can sleep at night because they know we've got them covered. And here's how we do it. Firstly, we provide unparalleled levels of protection and visibility for their data, no matter where that data sits, in the cloud or in multiple clouds, on-prem, at the edge, maximizing their flexibility and increasing those all-important infrastructure choices. We do this by enabling them to migrate workloads to, from, and between clouds and on-premise environments simply and at scale. We fully support container-based solutions, including Kubernetes and Docker, which underpin the agile DevOps functions in modern businesses today. And the fact that Commvault protects more VMs in the cloud than any other vendor with over 1 exabyte of data, and the fact that 63% of our customers are true multi-cloud in nature, that's a capable testament to our cloud capabilities and potential. Secondly, and perhaps as importantly in these COVID times, we provide them with the capabilities to help identify and address threats to their data. And if they are attacked, with Commvault, they're able to execute reliable, predictable disaster recovery, bringing systems back to production service within their recovery SLAs, reducing their financial and their reputational losses. And let's not forget, the data that's valuable to companies is also extremely valuable to other less ethical players. So this means being prepared for cyber attacks. To put that into context, during the onset of the COVID pandemic, there's been a 400% increase in malware and ransomware attacks. Therefore, today, resilience requires being protected and our customers to be one step ahead of the increasing number of cyber criminals and malicious agents active in the world right now. It's become clear that while the world suffers, the bad guys are becoming more and more numerous and even more aggressive, actively looking to take advantage of many companies that are transitioning to cloud to accelerate that digital transformation journey. And with more and more employees working remotely, there are more opportunities for available attacks, a bigger attack surface, if you will. So, to tell you more about our ransomware capabilities, I'd like to pass across to my colleague, Nigel Tozer.
Thanks, Mark. Now, unfortunately, ransomware continues to be a threat to our data. And when you look at the stats, they're pretty scary. Over 3/4 of those that got hit had up-to-date endpoint security, and over 1/3 of those that do get hit with the ransomware take more than 7 days to recover their data, which for any organisation is problematic, whether you're commercial or whether you're public sector. Now, one of the big issues around security, and I've put up a slide to show what Security Boulevard at the beginning of 2020 said would be a big risk factor from a security perspective. All of these actually can lead to ransomware, even though ransomware is only number 2 on the list. Phishing has got a lot better than it used to be. So when we think about phishing, we maybe think about bad grammar, bad spelling, pixelated, horrible logos. It's a lot more professional now, and it's much easier to catch people out. Now, what's also problematic with phishing is it's moved on to a point where it's combined with other techniques to trick the recipient. It might be person-to-person phone calls. They might even use information from your social media profiles. Now, of course, quite often the malware is getting in there for lots of different reasons. More often than not, though, it's ransomware. Now, ransomware is number 2 on the list, and ransomware has become even more dangerous for a number of reasons. First of all, it's moved on from just being a ransom by encrypting your data. Now they can also take your data hostage, actually leak it from your organization, which is not good at all, because then, if you're a European, then you're going to have to report to your regulator if that information contains sensitive or personal data. Then, of course, ransomware's got a lot smarter by trying to attack your backups itself. In fact, there's some that will try and find software snapshots on arrays and remove those. So all of that makes it pretty dangerous stuff. Now, IoT, you might think, what's that got to do with ransomware? But unfortunately, some of the IoT security is a little bit more lax than it needs to be, and this can give a backdoor for hackers to get malicious code into your environment. Next, you've got this notion of insider threats. Now, there's a high-profile media story earlier this year where an individual was bribed to install some malware in their organization. Now, of course, they were lucky enough that it got caught, but it did make the news. Now, most insider threats really aren't that kind of attack. It's normally, innocent clicking on one of those phishing emails that I talked about earlier on, but it's still very problematic. And finally, the last one is this notion of adversarial AI. There really is an AI arms race going on right now. Now, that's going to cause a lot of problems if you've got up-to-date security software and the attacker that's coming after you has better AI. And it's moved on now to a point where the hacking groups are actually getting to the stage where they're challenging the capabilities of nation-state bad actors. Now, part of the problem with ransomware, it's not an if, but a when you get hit. Now, there's a large number of organisations that have made the news. One on this slide famously went out of business. I've got another one here that reportedly paid a rather large ransom. And unfortunately, you've got hacking groups that have become media celebrities in their home countries. They can't leave those countries, of course, but it's become kind of a rock star sort of thing that's going on with them. And Rye UK is an example of that. And the individuals that provide the ransomware as service kits that any old Tom, Dick or Harry can go out and use is causing an awful lot of attacks. And that's just one strain of malware. There's an awful lot more that can give you a lot of trouble. Now, we often get asked, is ransomware really the threat that everybody says it is? Now, we've seen organisations have 10,000 servers wiped out overnight. We've had other organisations that couldn't recover because they didn't take a single backup of their DNS system, or they've been slowed down because all of the usual authentication tools that they use are completely offline. We also see organisations that are completely wiped out because they have nowhere to recover to, because the ransomware keeps reinfecting them as soon as they start to recover. So there's some really big issues out there. We also see challenges around priorities inside the organisation, shifting constantly, tired staff making mistakes because they're working long hours. So the answer really is yes, ransomware can be a devastating impact on any organisation. So what do we do here at Commvault to ensure that your data is kept safe? Well, first of all, we have some really neat detection tools using artificial intelligence and honeypots to enable you to spot an attack very early and shut it down. If you do get hit, then we take other steps to ensure that your backup systems and your backups themselves are kept safe. To do this, we make sure that data is air-gapped and isolated, and we ensure that the backups themselves are immutable and can't be changed. When I mention the air gap, really that's very important in today's world. Most backup systems use online media such as disk or cloud, and if you don't have some kind of data isolation, then the backups themselves can be encrypted, and then of course you're either out of business or you have to go and pay the attackers. And finally, we also make sure that we're always checking the backups to make sure that they are safe and they're not under attack or being encrypted. And that means that you're always in a position where you can recover, especially when you combine it with things like cloud disaster recovery. Now, one of the things that's really important is if you've got a really secure backup system, but the environment that you drop it into isn't secure, what can you do? So at Commvault, we also make sure that we put in place a security dashboard, and it looks at all those other factors around the backup system to ensure that you're as safe as you can possibly be. Now, these reports enable you to not only find out and take some decisions for yourselves, because obviously there's always a fine line between being secure and stopping people from doing what they need to. But if you need to change anything, the instructions are built into this, again, to enable you to be as secure as you possibly can. And finally, from a recovery readiness perspective, we have AI built into Commvault to enable you to see if you're going to hit your RPO and RTO SLAs. And if you're not, it'll automatically reconfigure the protection policies to ensure that you will. If it can't be done because there's a speeds or feeds issue, then we'll also flag that up so you can make the necessary infrastructure changes if you need to. Now, this is really important whether you're in a modest environment or if you're in the most complicated hybrid cloud, when keeping a track on all of this can be really difficult. Having the power of AI and machine learning to help you is really important to keep you safe. So what could you do today to keep yourselves protected? Well, first, we always recommend doing a really strong assessment. Be honest with yourselves. Are you really in the place that you need to be with regard to security training for your staff, with your security software, with your patching, firmware, network configurations, and so on? All of these things have a big impact, but you also need to review where you are with your backup and recovery systems too. The other thing we always say is imagine the worst case scenario. Your DNS has gone, Active Directory is gone, you've got no authentication, no communication, you have nowhere to recover to. How does all of that work? How do you get recovered and put your organisation back into where it was before the attack? So you really have to think outside the box and really imagine that worst case scenario. Finally, of course, you need to develop a good recovery plan. Now, any serious organisation should have a good BCDR plan in place anyway, but including things like cloud disaster recovery, having air-gapped storage in the cloud, or even using some older technology that's really secure like tape can all be beneficial. So with that, I'll say thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe.